So we're now a few days in to what lots of people are referring to as the new normal. And yet, I also think that even as we're saying that, we all recognize that none of what is happening now feels normal at all. In fact, this feels like a massive period of adjustment as we all try to plot our course through this strange new world of self-isolation, of working at home, of shopping when the shelves are empty and the goods are being rationed. And of course, one of the challenges we're also facing is what it means to stay connected, even if we are far apart. The last couple of days have also been strange because physically, I've not been in the presence of anyone beyond my own family, and yet I've been inside the homes of lots of friends and colleagues. Maybe amongst other things, this is going to be remembered as the year when we got a glimpse of all the home offices, the studies, in this case the dining room, of lots of people whose thresholds we haven't actually crossed physically. And I've picked up the phone and I've spoken to people who I don't normally call. And in each case, I felt a tangible sense of how much it means to have that connection with them. So can I encourage you to keep making those phone calls, to keep on keeping in touch, even when we have to keep our distance? A few days ago, I found myself asking the question of where Jesus is in the midst of this uncertain and difficult time. And some of you might have seen that reflection that I shared on the image we thought about of Jesus who is on the road, Jesus who is walking towards Jerusalem. And if you haven't watched it yet, you can find it on the SBC YouTube channel. But that's not the only question I've been mulling over during these last couple of days, because I'm not just concerned with where Jesus is. I've also found myself wondering about how Jesus is. How does Jesus feel about all of this? And as I've been thinking about this, I find myself drawn to another story from the Gospels. And in this case, it's from near the end of the first chapter of Mark. So this story is about a time when a man with leprosy comes to Jesus and he gets down on his knees and he begs. And he says to Jesus, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." And then Mark goes on to tell us what Jesus made of all of this. Let me read to you from Mark 1, verses 41 and 42. Jesus was indignant. And he reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said, "be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him and he was cleansed. So Jesus was indignant, which might strike us as quite a surprising response because we normally think of Jesus as kind, as gentle, as compassionate. But why would anyone feel indignant when they met a leper? Part of the problem we've got here is that when Mark wrote his gospel in Greek, he uses one of those biblical words which is laden with meaning, which is actually very hard to convey in one equivalent word in English. And the word is splanghnizomai, and it carries with it a sense of deep care and compassion, of pity, and yet it's not a soft and fluffy sort of response. It also suggests the idea of feeling something in your guts. So this is not the response of someone who feels a bit of sympathy. They are actually overcome with emotion at what they're seeing. When Eugene Peterson translated this verse in The Message, he talked of Jesus as being deeply moved. Why is he deeply moved? Why does he feel indignant? I wonder if part of what we're seeing here is response of God to any situation of human suffering, any moment when God comes face to face with his creation broken or spoiled, anyone experiencing the physical pain or the stigma or the poverty and injustice that we constantly see in a fallen world. Maybe this story feels particularly relevant for us right now because one of the ways that lepers suffered was the way that they were forced into isolation from others. And yet, This isn't the only example of this gutsy, intensely emotional, splanchnitzomoi compassion that we find in the gospel. You know, Matthew tells us that this is the way Jesus responded when he saw the crowd of 5,000 that he went on to teach and heal and feed. Luke tells us that this is how he felt when he saw the bereaved widow of Nain. His heart went out to her, as the NIV puts it. And I think it's important to keep this picture of Jesus in our minds and in our hearts as we walk through this difficult season. Just this reminder it gives to us of the fact that God is not impassive while all of this is going on. And his response is more than just a gentle care. He is with us and he feels for us and he is indignant, because this is not how it was meant to be. The heart of Jesus is going out right now to every person who is sick or who is anxious about the symptoms, to everyone who is feeling alone as they face isolation or quarantine, to every student who is wondering what will happen now about their GCSEs or their A-levels, to every individual who is concerned about their job. And maybe the fact that he feels indignant helps us as well, because it gives us a bit of permission to feel indignant too. So I want to pray another blessing for you now. And this is my prayer, that you would know that the indignant Jesus is near to you, that you would feel afresh the deep love of the God who comes to us in the man who looked on the struggles and sicknesses of people like us, and he felt the compassion in his guts. Pray you would know the blessing of Jesus, whose heart goes out to you. And I pray you would also know the hope that comes from being near to Jesus, who constantly told these people of how their faith had saved them and then encouraged them to go in peace. God bless, and speak to you soon.